I'm going to start the lecture at the end of my talk because there's a story that is about home, and I think the kids who are back in the back will enjoy it. So you're just going to have to it's going backwards this time. But we worked with some ideas that I'm going to be sharing, and I'm going to talk a lot about some things that I think we'll all be able to wrap our thought around in support of this precious community and some of the stuff they've been going through. So we'll get into that in a little bit. But I wanted to tell a story about when I really had to find a sense of safety. And my home was out in the country, and we just moved there, and it had a penitentiary, a prison, and people would escape sometimes. And so we had this idea, my husband, Craig, you want to say hello? He and I traveled together, and he was in the military, and he thought we needed to get a big dog, so we felt kind of secure out in the country. So we got a Great Dane. Anybody here ever have a Great Dane? Well, Stanley was his name. A big Harlequin, black and white Great Dane. I should have named him Craig. Well, I had husband for that. But he was gone a lot, so that's why we got Stanley. And it was about 1/10 of a mile from our driveway up to our house. And we didn't have a screen door at the time. And so Stanley was, kind of our guard dog, but it was kind of a joke. The kids, in fact, used to hide. They'd get behind an umbrella and go down at the driveway entrance and get behind this umbrella, and they'd come sneaking up, and Stanley would look and not know who it was, and he'd bark and hide behind a tree. And we thought, this is really a joke. This is our guard dog. So Stanley, and he also, one time we were out in the garden, and there was a monarch butterfly came by at about Stanley's height, and he was tall, he was a big dog, and he clomped onto this monarch, and I said, Stanley, no, and he opened his mouth, and the monarch just kept flying on. And Stanley loved everybody. Stanley would sit on your lap. If you sat on the sofa, he'd move his bottom over and sit right down with his legs on the ground. And he also talked. He said, Mama. I'd say, Stanley, say Mama. And he'd go, Mama. He talks, and I'd say, Stanley, say I love you. And he'd go, I love you. And I'm like, oh, wow, this is the greatest dog in the whole world. Well, I'd been thinking a lot about safety. We had a number of kids, and I'll share that in a little bit. And one day, Stanley was upstairs, and I was downstairs. We have like stairs that go to the front door, and you go downstairs to a downstairs laundry room and some of the bedrooms. And I heard a knock on the door. Now, as I said, we didn't have a screen, and it was way remote, and I was all alone. And when I heard that knock, I came up, and there was a man standing there, and he didn't look like a very nice guy. And he had a squirt bottle in his hand, and I could tell he didn't have a car, so he'd walked all the way up our driveway. And I said, may I help you? And I had a bad feeling. And he said, I've got something for you. And I said, I'm not interested. And he was holding this squirt bottle. And I stepped backwards, and he stepped forward, and he said, it'll only take a minute. And I said, no, thank you, I'm not interested. And I kept stepping backwards, and I was thinking, where's Stanley? Not a word out of Stanley until the third time the man said, I've got something for you. And I started praying. And the way that I prayed, I'm going to share it. I call it a 4R process. The first thing I did is I said, no, I rejected this thought that this man was coming for something other than good. And then I thought, he's made out of God's qualities, and I was just praying, and he didn't know I was praying because I was just standing there smiling, And then I started really seeing in him that he was good and he knew it. And right when the fear was kind of coming, and it stopped and it got real quiet, Stanley slowly came walking down the stairs, and I'm standing there, and the man's standing in front of me, and he sat down next to me, and he looked at the man, and his head was about this tall. And the man looked at Stanley, and he looked at me, and he said, whoa, that's a big dog you have there? And I said, he is, isn't he? And he said, well, I better go. So I'm like, yes! So that's your story, kids. I hope you like Stanley. Stanley was a wonderful dog, and the way I got to feeling safe wasn't always so easy. But before I get into that, I want to share that there are restrooms there, and there are restrooms you can get to there, and there's cider and wonderful things, cookies. And the dear, dear folks who called me 4 days ago to give this lecture, I want to give you a great big hand. Thank you, and lots of love for your hearts. Not easy when you have headlines that say close call. or recovering. You know, some of these things, and we were seeing you on the news, and I'll tell you, you have a lot of love coming toward this precious community. Lots of love. And the interesting thing is when you see all these disasters and the things that people are faced with, the thing that comes through is all the kindness. How many wonderful things have been going on in this community. Just driving through and seeing the thank you to the firefighters, and we love you. So much good is coming out of this experience. Tonight, the goal for me is, and for this community who brought me here, is that we all join together in a kind of powerful renovation, if you will, of thought that really brings to light more love, more affection, and maybe even new ideas that will help those who've been through tough times to feel how loved they are. So it's a really mental power that we're going to tap into that has to do with a home within that no one can lose. So I'm going to talk about safety and security, about comfort, restoration, and healing. So if the boys have had enough and they want to go into the nursery, they're welcome to get out and go to the nursery if you heard enough about Stanley. Okay? Thanks, guys. Craig and I have a big family. We live in Salem, Oregon, and we're out in the country, and we have 6 kids, and none have the same 2 birth parents. So and they range from 16 to 43, and we have 16 grandkids and 2 great-grandkids. And because of the mix of our family, we've had to really discover what home was all about and find a deep, deep sense of home that will help some of the children we've taken into our home feel that they're just as precious and loved as those of us who've maybe had homes for many, many years and have very secure lives. Our kids, just to tell you a little about them, I had a child when I was 17, dropped out of high school at 16, and I'll tell you why in a minute. And then we have 1 birth child. And then from the state of California, we felt like we had a lot of love to share, so we adopted a child, a biracial daughter, who was 9 years old when we got her, and she'd had 14 homes and had had a pretty tough life. And she was working with a psychiatrist, and we became good friends over the year of adoption process. After that year, and the adoption was final, he called me, Dr. Walker, and he said, "I've got another child for you." And I'm thinking, great, this is what I don't need, is another child. Oh, he said, "Just meet her." And I'm thinking, this is not going to work. It's, and I do think it was like going to the Humane Society to pick out a puppy or something. And it was really tough. So I went to meet Kate. And Kate was 6, and she'd had 13 homes. And there had been a lot of abuse, and her sense of home was so scattered that she hadn't been able to attach to anybody. So there was a lot of fear and a lot of displacement, things that had happened in her life that made it, well, they told us she probably wouldn't attach. And she bit her nails and an eye crossed, and she was just she looked like a little giraffe. She was freckled and blonde and just darling little girl, but very frightened. And so I went to meet this little gal, and I said, okay, I'll take her for an ice cream cone. And Kate and I got an ice cream cone, and we went to go to the park, and we didn't have any money. I didn't. No coins to park at the parking, at the park, in the parking meter, to put in the meter. And I said, honey, we can't stop. I don't have any coins. And little Kate, who was living in what we later found out was an abusive foster home, she reached in her pocket and she pulled out and she said, I have a nickel. I thought, whoa, this little gal has her own sense of home, I thought. I don't need to worry if I have enough money or it's not coming from me. My job, I realized in that I have a nickel moment, was to find within that precious child her own home that she had within her that nobody could ever take from her. And we began a process that took many years and lots of love and lots of hugs, and her own beauty began to shine through this fearful face, and the eye uncrossed, and she quit biting her nails, and she just turned into the most kind, warm, loving daughter you could have. And she's now married and has 3 beautiful children, and she's actually adopting one. She'll get him in a couple weeks from now. And I couldn't have a more beautiful daughter. Now, I could never have done this if I hadn't had some of the ideas I'm going to share with you, that each and every one of us has a home within. And we might have a house to put that home in, and we might not. Some of us, I was homeless at one point, and So was the discoverer and founder of Christian Science, Mary Baker Eddy, homeless, and